Man, Phil, I got to tell you, when I see those little VU meters on the Class A amplifier, it makes me want to upgrade.
Yes.
Hmm.
I love them, man. I love them. That's what's in this room right now that I'm in.
Oh my God, you have such a great backdrop there. You got some Polk L800s and the Bowers and Wilkins D4s, right? The 804 D4s.
Exactly. So I wanted to kind of change up the backdrop from yesterday. I was in the theater yesterday, and now I'm in our 2-channel room. And if you look at the slide that I actually have up, you can actually see the whole room that I'm actually sitting in. So this is our new 2-channel room in our new building in San Diego, and it has Marantz Polk Audio L800s, as well as Class A, and the new beautiful white ones behind me are the new D4s. Yeah,
nice, man. We got to fly out there, Don. I'm telling you,
we absolutely have to.
Yeah,
come on, man.
All right. Well, we'll take you up on that in the short future. So today we're going to be focusing on not the 2-channel stuff, which is, my favorite. We're going to be focusing on integrating gaming with HDMI 2.1. We got Phil Jones here from Sound United. We got Sam Metivier from AV Pro Edge. I hope I didn't butcher your name, Sam. And of course, we've got Don Dunn from HD 2020. How's it going, guys?
Great.
Yeah. So, this has been on my mind a lot lately since I've recently plugged in my Xbox One S to my SR8015, and I'm having some configuration issues that may not be issues. It might just be how the Xbox works. And some of that I'd like to go over with you as well. But I know, Phil, you have a whole plan, so I'm going to let you have the mic and kind of get into what we're talking about here, what the purpose of this live stream is for CEDIA.
Well, the purpose of this live stream is the fact that there's a lot of things that are part of HDMI 2.1. And people have a lot of questions because you're trying to connect gaming systems which have their settings, TVs which have their settings, and AVRs which have their settings. And people assume that if you have HDMI 2.1, you get all the features of HDMI 2.1. But we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that there's a lot of things that are part of HDMI 2.1, and you don't have to do all of them to have that certification. There is something that you will see on most of them is bandwidth. Bandwidth is definitely required, more bandwidth. Because if you look at it, bring up the slides real quick, Gene. If you look at it, there's, like we talked about yesterday, there's certain things that make up a video picture: resolution, frame rate, color depth, brightness range, and color space. Color space is like your color gamuts, what type of colors can you create? Brightness range is the differences between the dark areas and the bright areas. Those things do not dictate or make the file size bigger. However, if I show you more frames per second, like going from 60 to 120, that's going to require more bandwidth. If I move up your resolution from HD to 8K, each frame or each is bigger. And if I show you more frames per second, the file size gets bigger. If I give you more bit depth information, more steps of information in the signal, that can make the signal bigger as well. And there's also things such as how often you sample it, chroma sampling. Those are the things that make the file size bigger. The big jumps that happen in HDMI 2.1 have to do with resolution and frame rate. And both of these things apply heavily to gaming, because let's be honest, Gene or Don, have you guys seen a 4K 120 piece of video yet? With the exception of maybe some test footage?
Just test footage. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just at trainings.
Exactly. Look what we can do. One day you're going to see it, right? So
you can't have it.
So a lot of times these benefits are more applied towards these gaming consoles, right? Or if you have a gaming PC or graphics or a high-end graphics card like a GTX 3090 in your gaming PC, you can support these higher frame rates and resolutions. Now, one thing I want to be clear, not every frame of the movie you're watching is going to be at 8K 60 or 4K 120. Because it has to do with what you're writing and what you're creating and how challenging it is for it to make it. So when you start adding more resolution, more bit depth, more chroma samples, do you want ray tracing on? All that impacts it. So you can have a maximum of 8K 60 and 4K 120. Now, the interesting thing is the gamers are more, of course, concerned more with the frame rate for the smoother motion than they are chasing absolute resolution. Would you agree with that, Sam? You're like a gamer. I think you got all 3 game systems, right?
I definitely agree with that. One thing we're seeing is as frame rate increases, latency is actually decreasing on the inputs of displays.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's one thing too. I actually test projectors as well. And to get the lower latencies, it's the higher frame rates. When you go from 24 to 60 to 120, you will see that the latency goes down. And it's all about me seeing smooth motion so I can get a better shot, and me seeing you before you see me so I get a better shot, right? So that's the whole goal of these. So right now, these are your solutions for utilizing that higher frame rate and resolution. I don't even think there's very many 8K games out yet. Now that's a decision for the the game developers. Most of them are also gravitating towards building games with higher frame rates versus higher resolution. I don't even think is there an 8K game available right now?
If you've got a PC, Windows Flight Simulator is supposed to get an 8K upgrade here. I know there's some Ori Will of Wisps. There's a couple that say that they are able to do 8K. I haven't been able to produce it yet, but it should be on its way.
Yeah. Okay. So they're coming, but right now it is about. It seems like frame rate seems to be the thing that everybody asks me about, and we're actually starting to see projectors as well as TVs that support 4K at 120 frames per second. There's a new Hisense that was just launched yesterday, and the new JVCs also the new models all have HDMI 2.1 and support not only 8K 60 inputs but 4K 120 inputs, which is actually pretty slick. Now, I do want to address something really quickly. Our receivers support a wide range of different types of resolutions. And if you look, there's 3 different signal inputs or signal format types. There's standard, enhanced, and 8K enhanced. Standard would be something like if you had an old DVD player and you want to make sure that it's compatible, because that supports frame rates up to bandwidth up to about 10 gigabits per second. Enhanced supports up to 18 gigabits per second, which is enough for 4K at 60 frames per second in HDR. When you set it to 8K enhanced, the bandwidth capabilities go up to 40. And we'll talk about why 40 is more than enough, even though the standard says 48 is maximum. But it will take it up to 40. But how it communicates, how the display communicates with the AVR changes. So when you're in standard enhanced, it's using what's called TMDS, or how the signal goes down the HDMI line. When you go to 8K enhanced, it switches from a TMDS communication scheme to an FRL communication scheme, which means don't turn this on a Marantz or Denon AVR unless you have a HDMI 2.1 compatible display, or they will not be able to communicate. So that's an important tip. And if you try to select it, the receiver will warn you. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Do you have an HDMI TV? Does it support this much frame rate? Before you turn it on, because if you click it on, the picture will go blank. Now, speaking of compatibility, Denon and Marantz receivers are compatible with most HDMI 2.1 enabled devices, gaming cards and gaming consoles. But there is a select few or select one device that there was a communication or compatibility issue. If you have that device and you're experiencing a problem, plug it in first, because you may not have the experience, may not have the problem. But if you do experience a problem with that particular device, we actually have a solution. This little guy here. This is the new adapter, the SPK 618, I believe. And what this does is this goes in line, if you go back to that graph, between the device that's having an issue and the receiver. And think of it almost like a translator. So they are talking the same language. Just like everybody else is talking Italian and this one piece is talking French. All right. So this makes sure that they talk. Now, if you buy a device, a gaming device, and you have a problem, and you've already made sure your TV settings are correct, your receiver settings are correct, and your gaming settings are correct, and you have a problem, then you can go to denon.com /adapter or marantz.com /adapter, and it will give you the ability to register for this. It will also ask you what your serial number is. And depending on the serial number, you may not have a problem. If you have an older serial number and you're experiencing an issue with this device, then these are free. Okay. Or if you just want one because you want one, they're still free. But like I said, 90% of the time, 99% of the time, for most customers, especially if you're a movie guy and you're playing movies, you're not going to need it. You're not going to have a problem. All right.
Can you get the serial number? Can you get the serial number for your receiver on the on-screen display, or do you have to go to the back of the receiver?
You know, I cannot remember. I'm assuming you're going to have to go to the back.
Okay.
But it's like serial numbers that end with like 70,000. So it's like number
Right.
70000, that kind of thing. So if you look at it, and if you go on the website, it'll tell you. And when you fill in the information, it'll ask you all of the, your information about, what do you have, what's your shipping address, everything else. So if you are one of those receivers that are experiencing this, we can send this little guy out. Now, a lot of people go, well, why'd you go this way? Well, I can tell you why I thought they went this way. We have a big home theater in our room right now, and I couldn't imagine having to pull my receiver out. I don't think Don would want to do it. Roll a truck. Don, what would be to swap a receiver out? What's the process?
Oh, it probably, depending on how big and how elaborate it is, it could be 1 to 2 hours. When you it's a little involved.
Yeah.
Then you got to reset the cables and get everything kind of groomed back in where it was. So it's not necessarily easy.
Yeah, exactly. Versus putting one of these zip tied to the back of the rack,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in and out in 5 to 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
So while I believe that that this is kind of it's a pretty good workaround for those customers because it minimizes the downtime of your system. But like I said, that's why this approach works. I think works pretty well.
Yeah,
but
and that's
if you
a
have any questions
testament
about that. Check out the support site.
That's a testament to Sound United to make that available for people. That's super cool.
Yeah, we go out of our way to, if there's we try to build the best products we possibly can, but sometimes, you may come across something, and we try our best to minimize the impact to the consumer, whether it's first trying to do a firmware update, then trying to come up with a quick solution that within 5 or 10 minutes it's solved, and then last but not least, something like a board swap. Like if you get if you want to upgrade your X8500H to an X8500HA, or a AV8805 to an AV8805A, that requires it to be sent in for a board swap because you're swapping out a lot more stuff than what would fit in this little itty bitty box. So think of it that way. Firmware, then we'll try to do some sort of quick adapter to get it working, and then board swaps and things like that. All right.
Right.
So that's something that I wanted to address. So now, and if you have any more questions, check out our support site. But now we were talking last time, Sam, about 48 gigabits per second. Is that what? Now there's a few devices that support that, but do most devices need that in order to for maximum performance?
Definitely not. We're seeing that most of the displays on the higher end, or even most of the 4K HDR displays you can buy nowadays, are 10-bit panels. And so they're not going to take advantage of 12-bit depth, 16-bit depth. They're only going to be able to use the same amount that they can display.
Exactly. So this is something that we want to stress. There are some displays that have 48 gigabit inputs. They do. A lot of them just have 40s, but there are some that have 48 gigabit inputs. But all consumer-based, and most 99.999% of professional-based stuff utilize 10-bit panels. Why? Because there's only like 3 or 4 prime manufacturers of panels, and the option when you check the box is 10-bit or 8-bit. So most likely, I don't care if it's a super high-end OLED or a top-of-the-line LCD TV, it's going to have a 10-bit panel in it. That's just the way it is. And if you look at, if I want to do 4K at 120 frames per second, 10-bit, which is the maximum amount of colors that you can do with the best color sampling, the number is 40, right? If I look at 24p, which is movies, for you movie guys, at 24p, at 10-bit, at 444, the number is 40. Now, 8K 60, it's 10-bit, but the number is 420. Sam, why is that?
It's just because the full color sampling is upwards to 80 gigs, which is nearly twice the bandwidth of HDMI 2.1. And so in order to fit it down the tube, we kind of have to reduce the color sampling.
Exactly. So that is the standard. And guess what the standard ends up being? Drum roll, please, for a 10-bit panel, 40. So 40 is the actual speed limit that we are truly concerned with when we're testing a cable. Like I have this little guy here, and it tests cables up to 40. We have a built-in in our Denon and Marantz receivers, an HDMI diagnostics tool, and it tests cables up to 40, just to verify that you're getting the full potential that your display can output. The other thing that's interesting is even the graphics cards. The type of cardboard that they're putting into the graphics cards to output are pretty much topped out at 40. So while we talk a lot about 48, 40 is the way to go, okay? Now, gaming monitors may be a little different. People still want to crank up to 12-bit on a gaming monitor. But to be honest with you, the gaming monitor is probably still just a 10-bit display as well. It just seems really cool that you have it cranked up to 12-bit. And maybe with dithering or having a little bit more information, you get a better, the experience is better. But even your best gaming monitors are 10-bit panels, just to let you know. All right? So you can hide the slides for right now. We'll just continue on.
Sure.
Because I think, Gene, you one of the things you want to talk about is Gene's system. And as we go through Gene's system, we can cover a lot of the things that we need to cover.
So let me just give you guys a rundown. I had Don Dunn HD 2020. We built the Audioholics Smart House. He helped me do the installations. We did the wiring, structured wiring. In one of my systems, the family room system, we basically have all the equipment upstairs in a separate media rack, and we're using an SR8015. We're using the AV Pro Edge 8x8 matrix. I forgot the model number because your model numbers are pretty long.
The HD base T one.
Yeah, the HD base T one.
We switched them up to shorten them down on the new gen. So.
Oh, okay. So I have a Balum in the family room system that runs Ethernet up to the rack into the HDMI matrix and then connects to the SR8015. And in my family room system, I'm running an Xbox One S. I know I'm not the latest gamer. I'm a couple of generations behind, but I'm not a huge gamer. I just play a couple of games here or there. But I'm more concerned about the audio and the video quality more than, the gameplay per se. So I ran some screenshots here, and basically I thought I said everything correctly. I put it on for HDMI audio for Bitstream. I set it so the receiver will do the decoding because, as Sam pointed out to me in a private chat, if you don't set it for that, then the Xbox will take a Dolby Digital signal and upconvert it to Dolby Surround if it's not an Atmos game. Is that correct, Sam?
Yep. So if you have even a Dolby Digital, even stereo signals will all be up converted to whatever you set the bitstream format as, and it will always stay at that. So at times, if you watch stereo content, you may not have a center channel at all.
Right. So I did that, and the weird thing is anytime I check the sound, I either get PCM through the Marantz, and it says Dolby Audio Surround, or it just says PCM multi-channel in, but it shows all the speakers are active. So when I asked Phil, I go, how do I know if I'm really discrete or if I'm just up mixing and all the speakers are on?
Well, one thing I noticed, he says the one that says multi-channel in is definitely discrete. That's normally one of the ways that you normally sell. Normally when I see surround on the other one, if you go back to the previous one, Dolby Audio Surround kind of tells me that it's probably being upmixed. That's that's from my brain.
Interesting, because that's a splash screen, so that game has not activated. So maybe in the splash screen of the game, it's only in 2-channel.
Exactly. And then when you hit the game, you see it says multi-channel in. Like
right.
if you have anybody that has a Apple TV, a lot of times we'll see this as well if the content is not decoded in Dolby Atmos, but it
Right.
is still discrete.
Okay. So I don't have any native Atmos games. I thought Halo 5 was in Atmos, but I looked it up. It's very hard to find documentation on most of these games. It doesn't appear there's any Halo games currently in Atmos. That's like the next Halo game that's coming out. So from you just basically confirm if I see multi-channel in and PCM, it's definitely multi-channel. Okay.
Exactly. That's the best way to do it.
Okay. Now, if I switch back from Atmos in the Xbox to Dolby Digital 5.1, this then says Dolby Digital 5.1 instead of PCM. So it's just weird how the Xbox manages the signaling, I guess.
Yes.
But then the other question I had for you guys is the video side. I don't know. I don't have a 3D display. I've got the 900H 85-inch Sony. I thought it supported low latency and variable refresh rate. Does it matter on which HDMI input I'm using, or if I have to set it to game mode, or do some panels just don't support that, even though it's an HDMI 2.1 panel?
I would talk to the manufacturer. I would check to the manufacturer to make sure you have the because not every input on every TV supports or is HDMI 2.1. So that's the first thing. The next thing is there's certain, just because we were talking about this before we got started, there's what is the minimum, Sam, to be called HDMI 2.1? We were just talking about that.
So if you've got just a 4K panel that can do 120 frames per second, it only has to do 4K 120 420 at 10-bit.
Can you bring up the slide?
24 gigs per second.
Exactly.
So if we take a look here at the fixed rate link slide and we go to FRL3, you'll see there's an asterisk by 4K 120 420, and this is just denoting the signal that a display has to be able to show to be considered HDMI 2.1.
Exactly, and this is an important point, Gene. There's a lot of extra features that come with 2.1, whether it's variable refresh rate, auto latency mode, quick media switching, quick frame transport, all these other things. And there's a variety of different bandwidth capabilities. You only have to hit like you said, that 4K 120 420 at 24 gigabits per second to be called HDMI 2.1. And people go, why does your receiver only have one input and some products have 3 inputs? Well, they're both HDMI 2.1 devices, but one taps out at 24 and ours taps out at 40. Now, on top of that, we haven't even talked about the fact that it's what's called digital stream compression. And when that is applied, 40 gigabits is good for 10K at 120 frames per second. So when we talk about if I know it's a pain, but people say, why isn't all this stuff figured out yet? Well, once it's completely figured out, we're talking about you'll probably have to buy a flying car before you need another display because of resolution. Okay, 10K 120 with lossless compression, is what's capable out of 40, which should be okay for a long, long, long time. Now, the system supports 48. And that's because of the FRL. Can you talk about how they get a regular HDMI, Sam, to get 48? If you go back to that slide, Gene.
Sure.
So the HDMI cable traditionally, and I don't know if in the beginning of the presentation here we have the HDMI cable build, consists of what are called TMDS lanes or channels previously. And there was an additional channel with a clock to help sync everything up. Well, with HDMI 2.1, we've converted that clock channel into just another regular channel that can also send data and embedded the clock into the signal. And we were able to effectively, with the new encoding method, get up to 48 gigabits per second.
Yeah. So basically, each lane can support up to 12. And 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12 is where you get to 48. So most of the time when you see the cables, whether they're certified bullet trains, which we have all over our building, whether it's long active, optical active, fiber cables, or whether it's passive copper, you'll see 48. So the cables are normally certified to 48, but just know that the TV itself can only use currently and probably for a while 40. Okay, and most of the output devices may only be 40, and most of the pass devices that pass the signal back and forth may only be 40, but that's enough to optimize the performance of any current display. All right. And by the way, people are asking, what about Dolby Vision? Isn't that higher? Nope. Because The reason why they're using 10-bit is enough is 10-bit is more than enough bit depth to differentiate all of the different shades, to eliminate any contouring or banding at brightnesses up to about 4,000 nits. When you start getting to 10,000 nits, 0 to 10,000 requires a little bit more steps to give you smooth gradation. So when you get a 10,000 nit TV, that's where you'd probably what we're looking at a 12-bit would be a big benefit. But right now, even if you get Adobe Pulsar or the highest grading monitor, it's tapped out at 4,000. So that's just so it's a theoretical maximum of 10. But the actual speed limit right now at maximum is 4,000, and 10 bits is enough to give you very smooth gradations in color. All right. So that's
Cool.
something that I wanted to point out too. So hopefully, Gene, so just because if you bring up your slide, those things are marked off.
Yeah.
It could be because your TV doesn't support it, or one of the settings are off, or something like that going on in the receiver. Well, the cool thing about is there's ways to check that, right, Sam? How do you check that? You can check it on the TV first, right? Like you get the little gaming, like say you're doing a game mode. Let's talk about game mode. He was saying the game mode.
So for the most part, your TV menu, when you hit info button, is going to read you what signal you're at. If it's doing 120 hertz, sometimes it'll display that. It'll say 4K. It'll tell you if you're doing Atmos, and it'll tell you if you're doing HDR. Some settings in your TV can actually change how your TV operates. If you want to get full chroma, some TVs need to be named, or some inputs need to be named as PC or computer. If you enable like AMD FreeSync, it can disable Dolby Vision. There's a lot of settings that need to be configured to make sure everything works correctly.
Exactly. And what happens for those people who need more data, if you hit the info button, Gene, on a regular receiver, you'll get basic data from a Denon and Marantz. If you go into the menu system under the Generals tab, if you bring up the slide, there's 2 more detailed menus that you can look at: signal information and display support information. And these will tell you the receiver is what's called a repeater. It's in between the source, which is the game system, and the sync, which is the display. So it can read what's going through. So it will tell you what is being passed. Like, for example, auto low latency mode is being passed. And TV supports eARC, auto latency mode, variable refresh rate, quick media switching, and quick frame transport. It doesn't mean the signal is sending that. Does that make sense?
Right.
So just because not all of those things are available. And if you look at different TV manufacturers, they support different other additional things that are part of HDMI 2.1.
So if you have a system set up through a matrix, Sam, you really kind of need a separate calibration for gaming. It sounds like would you just basically put a separate calibration preset on the display itself, because you can't really do it in the AVR. So you would have to figure out how to get into game mode on the display itself, and have maybe put that in the automation system that it automatically goes to that mode when you hit the Xbox or you hit the Sony PS5.
You can do something like that, and especially if you have our calibrator and you have like Light Illusion or CalMan, something that you can actually save a professional calibrator selection in, or you can affect that game mode. If you hire a professional calibrator, they should be able to go in, save the settings for it, and so when you do enter game mode, you are going to get the correct colors. You don't have to worry about color shifting because it changes everything up.
I can't tell you a tip because I am a level 3 ISF calibrator, but what happens is most people calibrate their TVs have an SDR mode and HDR mode, right? The SDR mode, the first thing that a calibrator does is pretty much turn off all of the enhancements, right? And guess what game mode does? Game mode turns off all of the enhancements because the less things that it has to go through in processing, the quicker it goes from the game to your screen. So a lot of times it's turning off your color enhancements, your motion enhancements, all of that stuff to get the signal from point A to point B. A lot of times you could transfer all of the settings you've done, like your CMS or your RGB balance numbers, into the game mode, because most TVs you'll see game mode as an option. It just, you could manually do it from your remote, but with auto latency mode, it's done automatically. So once you can just go into game mode and transfer most of your settings, color, contrast, tint, RGB color, anything else into the game mode, and you're good to go. So if you're doing a calibrator and the calibrator has already done an SDR and an HDR calibration, you can just transfer that stuff over. So that's how it is kind of a nice thing, because all you're doing is turning off enhancements, and most of those enhancements I would have turned off if I calibrated your TV. Anyway.
So, Phil, one thing we should probably do as a follow-up is, how do you calibrate your display for gaming? Because I'm struggling with that now. When I put on like Injustice 2, which is like a Mortal Kombat game for Justice League. I noticed, because it's in HDR, all the colors are super saturated. So like if someone punches you and you see a red flash, the background is completely dark, but the colors are oversaturated. And I'm not sure how to fix that, because I went through the calibration settings through Xbox and I did all the different prompts that it told me to do, but it still does not look right.
What I would probably do is your TV calibrated for HDR right now?
I mean, not professionally.
Okay.
That's something
So what I would do is I would go to the Sony HD. If it's Sony, I would go to HDR on the Sony. I would go to its cinema mode or its reference mode, and I would write down all of those things, all of those settings, and then I would go back into the game mode when it's playing game, and I would put those settings in, which will probably reduce some of that. It seems like gaming, you want to see stuff in the shadows, and you want to see the highlight detail. And a lot of times you may have to lift up they call it brightness a little bit. So you can kind of see the guys hiding in the shadows a little bit more. You won't get as deep of black levels, but you'll never get caught from someone sneaking up behind you. So there's some things. What else would you say, Sam? I think that would be
another thing to pay attention to would be the color range. So the RGB triplet value. So like when you're in what is called 444 or YCD-CR color range, you're in a limited system, and so you need to make sure that your game console also matches the same color range as your display, or else you might get lifted black levels, and blacks will appear gray, or whites will become clipped, and it will just it won't look appropriate. And
that's a very good point.
That's how you view it.
And you see this in the Xbox, or the PlayStation, it'll tell you what color mode it's in, and you just have to match it on the panel.
Yep, both. You'd be in the advanced video output settings, where you can go to affect bit depth, and the Xbox is the same place you would find the range. Most of the time they'll call it limited or full. If you're doing like a RGB type signal, you're going to want to be in that full range or limited. But if you're in your YCD-CR, you're going to want to be in the limited range.
I thought I had it set for auto. I thought I had it set for auto.
I was going to say, most of the time it will do it automatically, but sometimes it's not. You can go into there and you'll see auto, and then play with full and limited on your Sony and see which one looks best to you.
Right.
Because it's, so that would be something that you can definitely do. Okay.
So is there any mode that will allow me to freaking beat these 10-year-olds that keep sniping me in Halo? Like as soon as when I respawn, boom, I'm dead.
Dude, I am the world's worst gamer. I just sit and watch my kids play, because I tell them, you missed that guy after he shut up, Dad. But that's
I can't even play online games anymore.
Now there's a couple of things. Man. There's some other things you want to talk about, because we had mentioned there's more to this than the frame rate. And you had brought up that slide showing all of the different things, and some of it was grayed out. So let's talk a little bit about some of those things, like variable refresh rate. Variable refresh rate means that the computer can only write, depending on what it has to draw and how you want it to draw it. It can only do it it can only draw so fast. So say you go in and you check all the boxes. I want 12-bit, 444 with ray tracing, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to draw you standing in front of some trees. The computer, the Xbox, the PlayStation doesn't have enough processing power to do that at 120 frames per second. So it will slow down and draw it completely, and then tell the TV, I'm ready to hand it to you. So the TV's refresh rate will slow down. Now, even if you bring up your thing and it says 4K 120, if VRR is on, that little indicator means it's supporting up to 4K 120. But at that particular second, it may only be writing 36 frames per second. Okay? Because if you have variable refresh rate on, you have a maximum of 120 frames per second, but it can be anywhere in between that. And a high-end gaming PC will actually show you, if you bring up a menu, how many frames per second it's drawing, and you will see it dance all over the place, from 60 to 36 to 95 up to 120. But most of the time, the 120 is someone standing in front of a white background, but not a bunch of trees or a building scene in some combat simulator. It's just not going to be able to do it. That's what variable refresh rate is, right? The next one is called quick frame transport. We say that this thing can only write them at certain speeds. Well, as soon as the computer is done writing it, it should be able to hand it off to the display. The old system would not allow you to do that. The old HDMI system would not allow you to do that. There was time slots that the source could give the display the image. So think of it as, like you said yesterday, a conveyor belt, and you're making teddy bears. And I have to, no matter how fast I make the teddy bear, I have to wait for the bin to show up for me to put the teddy bear in. That was the old way. The new way is a conveyor belt. So as fast or as slow as I make the teddy bear, as soon as it's done, I can immediately send it off to the display. Why is that good for a gamer? You have a brand new Xbox, Gene, and say, I got a brand new Xbox. My system has quick frame transport. Yours does not. They both computers draw it at the same time, but mine can send it off to the display before yours can, and I see you before you see me, and you're dead. So it's a total gaming thing, right? And of course, we've already talked about auto latency mode. Basically, in our receivers, for the last 4 years, we've had a game mode. Most TVs have had a game mode, but you, as a consumer, would have to go in and physically change that. Or Don, as a programmer, would have to figure out a way that when person was going to play games, some sort of discrete code to make the TV go into game mode and the receiver go into game mode. All that goes away now. You're playing videos on your Xbox. It's in all of the video enhancements are on, and your favorite picture mode is on. You go into game mode. It sends a flag to the receiver, which will switch off all of its stuff, go to game mode, and then send the TV a signal to switch into its game mode automatically. As a custom integrator, no more codes, and it works 100%.
Amen.
And you get an optimized gaming experience and video experience automatically. That is what auto low latency mode does. Now,
so I'm just going to blame my slow reflexes on an improper HDMI setting on my setup.
Exactly.
That's the real reason.
It's because it's not game mode. And then of course there's a couple of ones that even if you're a video guy or a game guy, you may care about. The first one, of course, is what's called we'll talk about quick media switching first. Quick media switching, what that is back in the days, whenever you switch frame rates, say you went from the menu of your Netflix to a movie, it would have to regenerate and re-authenticate rights, and the picture would go blank. I'm a projector guy. I will tell you that when the screen goes blank on a projector, it takes forever for it to come back, right? And people were assuming it was broken, which is why the Apple TVs took everything you watched and upconverted it to 4K at 60 frames per second HDR. I don't care if it was the Three Stooges or the Little Rascals. It was all being upconverted because they were trying to eliminate this blank out because customers thought their systems were broken. Now, with this new system, quick media transport, it doesn't have to re-authenticate when you go from the 60 frame per second menu to the 24 frame per second show, or the 60 frame per second video menu to the 120 frame per second game. You don't get the blank out. So I don't care whether you're a gamer or you're a movie person, that's cool, because everybody hates that black screen. And then the last part is, of course, we talk about eARC, right? So eARC is important. ARC stands for audio return channel. eARC stands for enhanced. Enhanced, this basically can pass more data down the line, and you get uncompressed Dolby Atmos, DTSX, multi-channel PCM. So at the same quality as a Blu-ray from a device connected to your display, right? So those things have nothing to do with resolution or 40 gigabits per second, but it does really enhance your experience, whether you're a video player or you're a gamer. Okay.
All right.
This is
Well, yeah.
fantastic info, man. Super, super helpful.
I'm wondering how many gamers we have online right now. You know,
I'm
if you
looking
guys,
at some of the things. I'm hearing latency and a whole bunch of stuff, you know.
yeah. Why don't you guys give us your feedback on what game systems you're running right now, and you know, if you have any configuration issues that we'd like to hear about. You know, it's all kind of a learning process for me. I'm not a heavy gamer, but I do want to integrate that into the systems and you know, play with the kids and stuff. I still rock an old Wii. I just it's a 480i, it's low resolution, but it's fun having the motion sensor and doing the bowling, and you know, it's just it's more interactive than a lot of these games where you're just sitting there on the couch pressing buttons. But
yeah, somebody was asking, Hammer was asking what causes the VRR flicker. That could, Sam, I mean, what could that be? That could be the display, the firm, because there's been problems with, like, I know LG had to do some updates, some updates, and Sony had to do some updates. It could be, I mean, what causes that?
So a lot of it is just playing sync times. If you got other things on, there could be some frame insertion to make up for the subfield of the actual display. So the display itself's refresh rate internally. There's a lot of things that go into it. When variable refresh rate in HDMI first came out, it's not like FreeSync or G-Sync. It's its own thing. It's a separate function. So it's just getting that all tailored out.
Yeah, and that's a good point. There's two things that you'll see with HDMI 2.1. One is VRR, and the other one is dynamic HDR. The way to think of those two is say we look at dynamic HDR. Think of Dolby Atmos as Coca-Cola, and think of HDR10 Plus as Pepsi-Cola. The dynamic HDR they're talking about is the white can of generic cola. Okay, and the same thing with VRR that we're talking about here. There's G-Sync, which is Pepsi. There's FreeSync, which is Coca-Cola, and then there's VRR, which is the generic version of it. Does that make sense? So, and all three of those are trying. So whether you're looking at G-Sync, FreeSync, or VRR, they're all trying to do the same thing, but it's different, almost like formats. And you may support one, but not support the other two, or you may support two and not support the third. Okay.
Gotcha. Question for you, Phil. Here is what kind of delays and does a demand in game mode?
I was going to check it actually next time with one of these, but I've talked to the engineers and they said that going through the receiver in game mode is pretty much negligible, or within not enough that you can even catch it with a Leo Bonar or one of these types of lag testers.
Usually about a millisecond with that HDMI chipset.
Exactly.
With the repeater chipset. So
if you're at 3.7, you're going to 4.7. You know, which is still freaking lightning fast.
Right. All right, guys.
I will tell you that if you have upscaling on or anything like, well, actually upscaling is turned off in game mode. So it's those types of things that are going to crank it up. That's going to slow it down.
Right. Yeah. So turn off all your enhancement modes on your display for sure. You know, the game mode is the way to go if you can.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate this information you dropped here. Let us know down below if you have any more questions related to gaming, and maybe we could have Sam or Phil pop in and answer some questions that we may have left off in this live stream. Guys, I appreciate your support. Phil, awesome to have you. Sam as well. Don, you know, we should be talking more about the gaming because the gaming industry is larger than the movie industry and the porn industry combined. So we should be covering
America.
more on
God bless America. God bless America. I just want to say that Phil Jones is a legend.
He is.
No, I'm not. I'm just excited. I just like this stuff.
You think?
You know?
I love it too. I just sit here for hours and listen to you.
Sure. Yep.
That's awesome. Legend.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to be back on the next live stream at 3:15 EDT time, and we're going to be talking about the Odyssey Editor app advancements and tips. And Phil's going to be back along with Jeff from Odyssey. So
Jeff
this will
Clark,
be engineering
from Odyssey. So
very cool.
So he knows it forward and backwards.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a couple more live streams today. Make sure you guys check it out. And then tomorrow is really the fun day. We're going to be doing advanced calibration stuff and having a loudspeaker panel to talk about loudspeaker specifications.
And
so
we have THX tonight, right? Where we get to
THX tonight.
put them on the spot.
What do those certifications mean? That's what we're going to be finding out.
Get them drunk.
Yeah.
So.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate it again. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to us to suggest video topics. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when live streams are next.
Oh, there's one more thing.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I got to give my shout out to, we do a lot of these webinars for Sound United as well.
Yep.
I'm trying to get Gene to start coming on mine too. So we have a YouTube channel as well. It's called soundunited.com. Let's go ahead and look Sound United training on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll put the link. I'll put the link. I'm going to be basically putting that link in all these videos, but thanks for reminding me to basically let everyone know. Sound United has a resource of great YouTube presentations on their channel, and we'll link to it below. Phil is awesome. He drops
it's
the
a
knowledge.
great channel. I was checking it out. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. You're putting that much information and training out. That's super cool.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of THX, you can ask Jeff Clark about it because THX and Odyssey were started by some of the same guy, Thomas and Holman.
Tom Holman,
that's true.
So that's kind of cool.
I actually had dinner with them years ago when Odyssey first came out. They flew us out there, and I got to meet him. It was really cool.
Wow,
that is cool.
Yeah, it got me in the business out of car audio.
Well, we will share some stories there tonight. Don't forget to check that out. That's at 8:30 EDT time as well tonight. And that's a wrap. So until next time, my friends, keep listening.
Keep listening.
All right.